What I wanted to share today is obviously this has been at least a good journey through Currie Cup, but there's been a lot of questions around player contracting and player retention for next year and what it's going to look like. Obviously, the relegation from Super Rugby doesn't place us in the ideal situation, but I think it's important to show to our own players, to our own group, the confidence that builds around the team at the moment. To our sponsors and to our supporters that the future for next year is also still looking good. We've got a good set of young players contracted for next year and some new signings that are coming to the Lions, which is from our side very positive, and I think reflects well on what JC and Akkers has done this particular season, to be honest. I think it again instills that the Lions is a place where you've got an opportunity as a player to come through the ranks and to play good rugby. So I think from their perspective, we're quite happy with what JC and Akkers has done with the team, and that breeds the interest for players to come here. We will issue a formal press release after this press conference, so I just wanted to take the opportunity to run through a couple of players, and then I'm sure you're going to have a couple of questions around the news this morning and comments made in the media over the last sort of 48 hours. I'm going to run through it quickly just from a positional perspective. Mark Pretorius, who is part of the SA Under-20 group this year, signed for next year as Under-21. Francois de Toy, who's part of our senior group, is signed for the next 2 years with us. Malcolm Marks, who was the SA Schools hooker, signed for another 2 years. Ruan Dreyer, prop, signed for another 2 years with us. Gideon Miller, who was in the SA School team 2 years ago, is signed for another year with us next year. Ruan Venter at Lock, Under-21, has signed for 2 years. Derek Mini has signed until 2014, which is good for us. 2 youngsters, Loose Forward Steph de Wit and Ruan Laram, has signed for the next 2 years. Willie Brits, currently playing good rugby, is also signed for another 2 years. You would have had the news of Warwick Tecklenberg from the Bulls, is also signed for 2 years. Fabian Boyson, also part of the SA Under-20 group this year, signed for next year. Janu Venter, also a loose forward, part of the SA Schools group this year. Akono Shunu, also part of the SA Schools group this year, signed for the next 2 years. Jaco van der Walt, who was part of the 2011 SA Schools team, fly-off, is also signed for 2 years. Marais Schmidt, who's currently playing Under-21 and is a senior next year, signed for 2 years with us at fly-off and fullback. Robert de Bruyn, the current captain of the Under-21 group, is signed for another year. Anthony Volmonk, wing, is signed for another 2 years. J.R. Esthuizen, who got a couple of caps during Super Rugby and at the start of the Currie Cup for the senior group as well, has signed for another year. And Dion Helberg has signed for another year. So that in an overview. There will be 1 or 2 more signings on, especially around the locks, that we'll hopefully announce in the next 2 weeks. But I think from this perspective, we're starting to at least keep together a group for next year, irrespective of a couple of players that we will loan out and where we might not extend contracts. That I think the group is at least starting to look healthy. Jaco and Elton we're still in discussion. With the Bok collapse over the last 2-3 weeks, it's sort of died down and they've focused their attention there. I know there's been a lot of speculation around Elton at Province and Jaco all over. Obviously, as we said right from the start, each individual player we will sit down with and look at where it's best for that player and best for the union ultimately. It's important that if we do put players on loan for another franchise, is that first of all the player is comfortable with that, because he's ultimately contracted with us at the Lions, and that if we loan a player, we want to make sure that he's part of that starting 22. So that he brings back experience from another Super Rugby campaign. We will not be loaning out players to go and warm the bench and just be part of an extended group. If we're not convinced that the player that we'll loan out will be part of the starting setup, then we believe we've got good enough rugby to play next year to keep them interested.